Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. My name is Robert Wing, and I'm joined now on the desk by Trekkie and Rich. Gentlemen, we just had a chance to see our first lower bracket match of the day. Obviously, Infinite going home. Method remains. Up next, I think, is another team right there alongside Method that teams just based on name value. Radar.io is certainly someone we expected to see kind of go much further into the tournament.
Yeah, definitely a new squad, though, for this Radar.io lineup. But yeah, they were one of the teams that we go, okay, based off that name, we expect them to do big things. The thing is they still can do it. They just need to go on a very long run here in the losers portion of the bracket. Pretty exciting, though, to just start off today with some elimination matches. Yeah,
every match absolutely matters here. And they're going to be playing against Games Revolted. Now, Games Revolted, you'll recall, was the team that actually sent Method to the lower bracket. So, you know, Games Revolted certainly looks like a team we want to keep an eye on, and Radar.io has certainly looked very human at this point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We have both seed 1, 2, 3, and 8 in the lower bracket right now. Obviously Infinite went home, and we have number 1 and 3 still left, and it just really shows how much competition there is in this EU tournament.
Yeah, I like, by the way, how we keep saying went home. Obviously, players are playing from home. That's just one of those sports holdovers. But yeah, we can take a look at the bracket here. Again, the winner of the series goes on to face Method. So Method is certainly making good on, I'm sure, what was their promise to kind of make the run back, get all the way up to the finals, and clinch their spot at the global LAN.
You know, one of the big things I had to say yesterday was I love how they started their run. Not the losing at the beginning, but how they actually did start winning, right? They make that statement. They pick a map that, you know, they didn't look great on the first time around, and all of a sudden they play it to their capability and actually show, okay, this is why. This is one of our comfort picks. Looking really good there, and now, hey, they're making that run. They have it started, but we have to see who they're actually going to be playing against. Games Revolted and Radar.io, two really strong teams.
Rich, if you don't love them when they're losing, you don't deserve them when they're winning. You got to love them through and through. But yeah, I agree. It's certainly a situation where you know, they went right down to the wire. They could afford to lose no more ground. They had to make their stand, and they've made good on that thus far.
Yeah, I really like how the comp really came into play there as well, where they can't swap after the first, after they've locked in the positions. And the first game, we didn't really see either of the teams have much preferred like classes that really shine in that dungeon. And then obviously Infinite loses, but then they have a mage, so they're obviously gonna go to Black Cold, and then after Method loses there, well, they take that pick where their Warlock really comes into play, because they know the other team doesn't have a Warlock and can't use that trick either there. So
yeah, that makes these first picks super exciting, right? Are we going to see the mage? Are we seeing the prep for Black or Cold? We're actually going to be getting, again, a lower Karazhan, so just like we did in the last series. We're actually good to hop on in, so same affixes as the last series. Gentlemen, take it away.
Yeah, one of the big things with that is, once again, we see just how important it really can be to pull down that first map win, but we're going to see the compositions here in just a second. We know the dungeon pretty well, Trekkie. Let's see what these guys have decided to bring, and all of a sudden, look what we got. We got one team with a mage, we got one team with a Warlock right out of the gates.
I am really interested to see, are we going to have both Black Cold and Arcway being shown later in the series as well? We will see how those teams play with those particular comps. It's really interesting here how we see the different teams approach this slightly differently as well. They're both gonna have the healer run out down and trigger the event, because that's really what's the only thing that can slow you down. Meanwhile, Games Revolted chooses to do a little bit of trash upstairs on Radar, doing the same, but we're having focus a little bit on the healer right now.
Yeah. Asmonbull going full run down right now. Probably has his speed set up, so he's going to be running really quickly. But this is a massive pull coming in from Games Revolted, and we're going to see this Fire Mage doing massive amounts of AoE damage on this massive pull, followed up by those Windwalkers. They're finally catching up here after they've managed to actually spread out those Tiger Palms and get some big damage with those actual images that they do get out. And all of a sudden, we see them just get 7% of their trash done.
Asmonbull just sitting there waiting for his teammates to catch up, as he had already started the event. He needs the rest of the team to kind of bring all those ads up to him so they can start AoEing them all together there, while Revolted has moved on towards and just waiting for the RP to settle right now so they can start the fight.
Yeah, it's pretty much what's going to be going down here. We already know which boss we're going to see as well. A thing that you've mentioned a few times is everything is going to be set, right? When we are on the tournament realm, anything that can be random is going to be fixed. We know which path is going to be open in the Arcway, for example. We know what's going to happen when we're in Court of Stars. Here, we know which boss is going to be popping out. But we see Games Revolted and Radar.io, even though they do it it in a slightly different fashion with how they pull it. They pretty much accomplish the same pulls. They're going to have the same percent, but it is going to be Raider.io that got down there just a little bit faster to start that RP. So even though they're locked up here as far as percentage, they pull the boss a little bit earlier. And they instantly pop the hero. That's going to be matched by Games Revolted, and now we just got to focus on the mechanics here of this boss.
Yeah, we've seen a very popular strategy here from the teams, always dealing with Miss Cauldron first, as she does a very nasty amount of damage or spike damage on players, and you can just kind of interrupt that. And while other teams might want to go for the broom that slowly follows people, it's just relatively easy to avoid and not have to deal with, as it does disorient you if it does catch up with you.
Well, we actually see Games Revolted, they first decide to take down Luminor, so that was the decision that they made here. What do you think of that? Because I know you did want to point out right out of the gates, because it's what we saw on the side of Raider.io. Miss Cauldron was their first focus.
Yeah, it can be a few things that really deal with that, and we see a lot of fire on Raider.io's side because they didn't choose to take him first, and on the other side, on Games Revolted, they have no fire because they took care of him, interrupted him instead. They probably had to deal with a little bit more raid damage or group damage going out, but it's not a tyrannical setting, so those aren't really going to one-shot you and deal with that much damage when there's nothing else going on.
And we see a lot of damage coming out on the side of Games Revolted. They're slowly kind of catching up, even though they were a few seconds behind just based off the RP starting a little bit quicker for Raider.io, but Raider.io right now only has one target left, and that is going to be Coggleston. They're going to be getting him down right now without too much of a problem, and just like that, Games Revolted, they've caught up. They're only about 20% behind, and they are going to have Coggleston left as well.
Yeah, as we saw in the start, the only thing that could really... The trash wasn't really the big thing. The big thing is about starting the event as soon as possible, because that will make you able to pull the boss earlier. So the trash, we saw both teams just wait around, but now they're dealing with the last one here, Cogglestone, which is a stove, and they're basically practically about the same here as well in percentage. Even the Raider had a few seconds of an advantage.
Yeah, and just like that, it actually looks like we are neck and neck, a race all the way at the start. Games Revolted versus Raider.io. This is going to be an elimination match. The team that loses this will no longer be in the tournament. Let's see how they decide to pull here. We've seen that this is a pull that a lot of teams will take in a different way, but we are seeing that Bop is actually going to be going out on the side of Games Revolted, going all the way down, getting as big of a pull as possible. Raider.io in a relatively similar situation, but they decide to not trade out that Bop. Instead, they're just going to be using that AMS, and there grip comes in. You got to make sure that you do not let these Firelands portals go off.
Yeah, you kind of want to, like, the Bob, as long as nothing else is in combat with the ads except for the tank, Bob will just basically make them not be able to do damage to you, right? But it will lose threat if other targets are engaged in combat. We're seeing Radar doing a lot better pull here, just making sure that everything is gripped up, gripped in, and even Revolted losing a player as well, the healer going down there in the end. But much better, cleaner performance from Raider.io there.
Yeah, and that's one of those pulls, too, where you really do see how good a team is. That's the one that can go wrong pretty easily. You know, you let them out of a stun for a second, you miss a kick, and all of a sudden that can be a wipe. Ultimately, Games Revolted starts to fall behind now because they don't get it done quite as quick. They also lose the 5 seconds when they actually do have Beam fall down, but Raider.io going to get another big pull going here, and we're seeing both of these groups follow similar strategies in this dungeon. This is one of those dungeons that we expect teams to have a lot of practice on. They know going into today they have to do it in this round. It was already predetermined.
Yeah, it's a very common theme in these dungeons, and throughout the whole tournament overall, like, if you're already AoEing 5-10 mobs, you might as well put in like 20 mobs in there, because they're gonna die about the same time as long as you have cooldowns and you don't run out of steam. That's gonna be the biggest problem. If mobs are gonna start running around, you're gonna start having to kite. It is that necrotic affix, so the tank is gonna get all those necrotic stacks so fast, and we see Games Revolted starting to do their kiting path here. The DK just running away, making sure that he gets as far as possible away, as these ushers aren't really CCable like all the small mobs that you see otherwise.
And now Raider.io is going to pull all the way into that room of Maiden, getting ready to do this boss. Right now we can see Karma getting traded out by both of these monks, because this can be a little bit of a scary pull. Getting yo-yoed for just a second there. Aspenball going to be able to keep them up. A very nice ring going to go down. That's going to prevent them from getting over to that tank. Going to keep everybody up. But Games Revolted, they try to do a somewhat similar pull. They don't even make it nearly as far on the run. They're going to start losing people left and right.
The tank having that issue with the necrotic Necrotic just not being able to be healed. He was kiting a little bit there. They haven't started the full hallway pull as Raider IO just did all the way to the boss. Interesting to see here that none of the teams really, we saw earlier that teams chose to sometimes pull Maiden as well as the pack, as that can be like free damage, as she doesn't have any one-shot mechanics unless you like all stack up together, especially not in a non-tyrannical setting.
Yeah, on the side of Raider.io though, they're very clean as far as the Necrotic goes as well. I brought up that Ring of Peace that's being used constantly. They have abilities to actually stop the ads from getting to the boss. Let that Necrotic drop off as quick as possible. But now they are going to be dealing with Maiden of Virtue, and we got to talk about the mechanics for Maiden. As you can see, the consecration has already started to be put out.
Yeah, you can. It's a lovely pattern you can see here from Raider IO as well. You see all the melee basically standing max range from each other while still being in melee range, and of course I'm counting the healer as a melee as well. As I was alluding to before, she has this bouncing ability, kind of like a chain lightning, that you cannot interrupt, and it will jump to other players, and every target it hits, it will do more and more damage. So even having two players standing, chaining off of two players can get really risky, and they're doing a really good job with running out. Now she gets the shield up, gonna do the Holy Wrath, and they've all dealt with the Repentance, the Paladin and the DK just getting rid of that with immunities, so they don't have to go in, take that extra damage from the Consecrate debuff.
Yeah, they're able to just melt that shield off. If they weren't able to get that shield down and the cast went off, it very easily would have been a wipe. But here, dealing with the mechanics very well. Not a particularly difficult boss, and they already are at 20% on Maiden of Virtue. Let's see if they get another shield that will slow them down a little bit. But they are starting to get miles ahead of Games Revolted here. Games Revolted is already working on Maiden, but they have those 3 deaths. They got slowed down by the trash. Now we're just waiting to see, will the Maiden get off another shield on the side of Raider.io, and it looks like they're going to be able to get her down without seeing that other shield. That's one of those things we talk about, like intermissions and things like that. Not as dramatic as, like, let's say an intermission where like Ulrag goes down or anything like that, but it will add a sizable amount of time.
Yeah, she gets a shield, even if she has dots ticking and stuff like that, she won't be able to be killed off until you actually deal with it. So it's very important to make sure that you get it down before that phase starts. And from Raider IO here, we're probably going to see the full room being picked up here. And we saw this not go perfectly fine for Infinite last dungeon, as they started getting those necrotic stacks, having to start kiting a little bit. And they still have a few mobs outside of that big mass grip as well, so they're having a little bit of issues with those. Just going to be a little bit of a time sink having to deal with them, but they're not very big HP mobs, so I don't see much issues for them there, but they're still at full HP.
Yeah, Raider.io has had all of these pulls down pat. They have not showed any signs of faltering, really. They got about 2 minutes left on their heroism here. It looks like they're most likely, though, with how they have pulled things, I'm assuming they're just going to go for Morose here, and yeah, they're going to get those ghosty dinner companions up in those traps to deal with them for now. You see 2 of them going out. They're going to go ahead and pull the other 2 with it. It looks like they're going to use that heroism probably on Ottoman. Right?
Yeah, it's important to... You don't really want to deal with all the ads at the same time, and that if you do, you definitely want to have Bloodlust ready for that. But they chose to CC 2 of them and then deal with the other 2, as Lord Crispin is in this pack here for both teams, and he does that very lethal AoE frontal kind of ability that if all mobs are stacked up on each other, that one, the cast time of that one goes so fast that you're not really going to have any time to react on move and avoid getting one-shotted from that, basically. So they're dealing with 2 of them, and then probably going to deal with the other 2. They might be they're going to go out automatically when Morose hits now 60% here. There we go. They're just jumping out right away, and they're not really that hard to deal with. They just don't want to deal with all 4 of them at the same time.
Yeah, Morose also right now has started to do his thing, which can get quite annoying. He's going to be jumping around, putting those garrotes, putting those bleeds on the players. Asmonvald was the first target. It's kind of good for them. A lot of tools to deal with it, but keep in mind these bosses aren't particularly dangerous in this dungeon. Trash is going to have to be a big thing that we do pay attention to. Morose now going to be jumping out, and still though, just dealing with all these mechanics excellently. Morose at 20%. Games Revolted in the room behind Raider.io by a considerable amount. They've had another death as well, so they're up to 4 at this point. That means they're 20 seconds behind. They're clearing out this trash before they even can get Morose pulled, and at this point, it is just Raider.io focusing down Morose, not even concerned about his buddies, just wants to see this guy fall.
Yeah, Baron is just going to be following around. He's going to jump to player and then Whirlwind follow him. As you see, the Aspen Ball, just kiting him constantly around there. As you say, they just focus the boss. There's no point killing those ads because they don't really do anything dangerous for them there. And we're seeing here Games Revolted, they're choosing to skip and going for the method Adamant pull that they did, we saw in the, or it was actually Infinite, right, that did that, where they just all jump down and try to destroy Adamant with all his trash there. As well, we're seeing the Avalanche Potions go out while the Invis is up, so you don't pull it, or get released from the Invis, so to say. So here we go, big pull, huge pull from Revolted.
Let's see if they can make up any time with this big pull as well. We can see they do have a minute left on their heroism, so most likely they're going to try to use that on Morose if this pull does go well. And it looks like they're doing a pretty good job at it. You can see right now they are able to get down that trash. Necrotic needs to be something that they're thinking about here, but they've already engaged. They've engaged Ottoman. They've got him off of his high horse, and they're dealing with him and Midnight right now. Raider.io, let's see how they decide to do things here. They can't slip up. Even though they were far ahead, Games Revolted coming out with this strategy is a good move.
Raider.io doing some small pulls. I wouldn't be surprised if they would have taken the boss as well, as they do have that Bloodlust available. This is the last boss for them. They're going to use Bloodlust at some point here, but they're choosing to do it in maybe two packs. Maybe they're going to do the last half of the room together with Adamant with the Bloodlust, while Revolted they still have Bloodlust available. They didn't need to use that on that huge pool either, and they're probably going to use it for Morose. Maybe just deal with all dinner guests at the same time. But Raider.io now dealing with Midnight in the first phase right off.
Yeah, and just to talk about how far behind, though, Games Revolted really is, they haven't even completed their trash percentage. They got these 4 deaths, which is going to be 20 seconds, and they still need to go back and deal with Morose. So Raider.io, all they have to do is play this one by the books. They just got to deal with Midnight. They got to deal with the guy riding him, and at the end of the day, they should be able to head up with that advantage. That would give Games Revolted the map pick advantage, though, which means we most likely are going to see Black Rockhold, and here's that heroism that they were holding on to for just this occasion, and now they're starting to melt down the Huntsman.
It's really interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Raider kind of had thought about pulling everything in one go with the Bloodlust if they didn't know that they were already so far ahead. If they knew that it was a little bit closer, that maybe they were behind, they might have gone for that riskier pull, but they chose to go for the half side pull and then the other side with the boss instead. And they are so far behind, there's no reason to take that risk at this point, but because Revolted are probably they just killed the boss, so they're literally just like 10% behind on this, but they are missing a full boss, and Raider.io is going to take the first one.
Yeah, Raider.io is going to take it pretty convincingly, and keep in mind, one of the first things that we were talking about, Rob, is the fact that we got a Mage and a Warlock again, so these
I can guarantee where we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think?
I think it's pretty clear where we're going.
Yeah, the comps, it really is telling when you look at the comps of these teams. Like, both of their all cards are on the table in terms of what they wanted to do for the second and third map. So, you know, where's the fast forward button? Because we kind of know where we're going. But
I was a little bit surprised by that, because I would think that the teams might want to maybe include both a Mage and a Warlock when we're in a group setting here where both of those
all eventualities.
Yeah, so you cover both of them. You can't really be outpicked because you bring one of those classes as well. It might not be as strong for other dungeons, but so it might not be worth it. I think the Mage is definitely the better pick here.
Obviously, the plan here for both of these teams was to win first map, and then you've got third map you feel like on lock. But, you know, as you said, I also would have preferred maybe a hedge my bets approach where you're covered for all maps. But
you hedge your bet a little bit, but at the end of the day, your focus has to be on the first map.
Absolutely.
If you think you're going to be able to get down the first map with that composition, lock it in. If you have one or the other, you say, okay, I'm going to go to game 3. It seems like a strong game plan to have one or the other. If you have the same one, all of a sudden, like, you don't know what the other team's going to lock in, right? Necessarily. Right. You got a little bit of history on them. You may know them from playing with them, but at the end of the day, you don't know exactly what they're going to lock in. And if you go Warlock Mage, I feel like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And like, by all means, just run a monk. It works.
Or 2.
Yeah, or 3. I think the main thing is 5, 7. I don't care how many. I'm pretty bad at math. But the thing is if you run Warlock and Mage and you have somebody flexing on it, they're not actually a main Warlock or Mage, it just doesn't seem worth it.
We've talked about that all weekend, which is basically like you kind of have these flavor of the month classes which are kind of rising up, but it's people at the end of the day perform best on what they know, what they have experience with. When you don't have to think through a decision, when it's just mechanical, and you've played this class for years and you know what you're doing, I totally agree there. But talking a little bit about that map, Radar.io looked incredibly disciplined. They knew exactly what they wanted to do there. Just really no mistakes.
No.
To be honest, that was an extremely perfect run. Obviously, for Games Revolted, there were some hiccups which ended up costing them because initially this map felt relatively close.
Yeah, I think the Necrotic kind of comes into play a little bit there as well. Sometimes you don't see it play that much of a role because the tank just starts kiting a little bit, but you have those ushers there that aren't slowable, they aren't stunnable, and they start chasing you away and making you sure that it refreshes the Necrotic sometimes and maybe even kills you if you start going low as you are unable to be healed.
Yeah, that definitely proved to be a factor, but we'll have to see if we're going to Blackrock. That's what I think that's what we all feel we're doing, but we'll get confirmation on the other side of this break. Currently, at the moment, Radar.io is ahead 1-0 in this series. Welcome back. Over the break, we did get confirmation. We are, in fact, going to Blackrock, although the affix bursting, a little bit surprising to me. I think if you are the one choosing this, if you are in Games Revolted, shoes, maybe you would have gone volcanic, which is kind of the order we've seen when you're just planning to really utilize that mage.
Yeah, all right. So the basic thing is you have a mage. You have the power of magic on your side. Just make it easy for yourselves. Yeah, every single school of it.
You've seen Harry Potter? You have.
The big thing is at the end of the day, if you go with an easy affix, you just say, okay, our class here is going to carry us to a certain degree. We don't need any flashy strategies. We already have the ultimate flashy thing, which is a mage that can do 40 billion gajillion damage per second. So it is interesting to see them pick bursting here. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, Trekkie, so just for maybe people at home who aren't as familiar with why the mage really excels in Black Cold, just if you don't mind breaking that down real quick.
Well, the real thing comes down to the Arcanist that basically does Arcane Blitz, I believe it's called, that not only does damage on its main target, but then it gets a buff that increases your damage done by 50%. And this one stacks. So what you do is you have the Arcanist cast on the tank a few times, and every time he gets the buff, the mage spell steals that. So it stacks up to 10, you get 500% extra damage. You're literally running with 8 DPS in that dungeon. However, you can be kind of squishy, and we've seen mages die in the past as well, and that kind of just, you lose so much DPS when that happens.
Right, and with bursting too, I mean, the monks we've certainly seen have had no easy time surviving with that affix, so it could be something interesting to watch in this. We don't necessarily want to say, like, this is clearly a Games Revolted win. It could definitely be something where Raider.io pulls the 2-0.
It's not clearly a Games Revolted win. You have a massive advantage going in if you have the mage. That's why you pick the dungeon with that class. Yes, 1,000%. But we have seen people be bad at it already, and we have seen people be better at it. It's not a particularly difficult thing to pull off. Yes, especially when you look at when you initially grab that buff, how you're going to be dealing with it. But to keep it up and to micromanage that, we have seen teams fall flat. We have seen teams that have both been running mages, for example. One team does it a little bit better. They're able to clear faster. So the main thing is if Games Revolted drops the ball, they drop the ball. Even though they do have this advantage going in, Raider.io could close it out here.
Yeah, hopefully there's no mom spaghetti on the menu for Games Revolted here. Let's go ahead and hop into the match. Again, this is on Games Revolted. This was their pick, both in map and affix. Are they going to be able to execute the strategy and get this win, or will Raider.io shut it out and move on to meet Method? Guys, take it away.
Let's see. I mean, I think the only time a mage has lost in here, though, was against another mage. So this would be MDI history if we saw Curry Magus going down here.
There are a few pulls here where the mage spell steal effect is hard to utilize on some of the trash packs. So we talk about the half moon room, where you would have to stack it up and kind of have to run for 5-10 seconds, and trying to keep that up, which is the buff won't last for 10 seconds, so you're gonna have to constantly refresh it. Can't really utilize it too much there, and but it completely melts bosses. Basically deletes them.
And now let's focus on what's going down here. We see both groups deciding, okay, we're gonna skip the beginning. We're gonna just invis past. They do that nice and easy. They get into the Amalgam of Souls. Both teams instantly popping their heroism. That's what we expect to see. Main thing right now, few mechanics going out. Every now and then you're gonna have to see both of these range. They gotta move out of that. They're gonna be able to do it without too much of a problem. You don't want to stand in that bad cone that's gonna be put down by Amalgam of Souls, but for the most part, we're waiting until it gets to that intermission phase. The ads that actually come out need to be dealt with. If they are not dealt with, it's going to cause the Amalgam of Souls to be able to do a giant burst that's going to wipe the group nice and easy. The question is, how are we going to see them deal with the ads? Are they going to just Gore Fiends them all in, get that massive AoE, or are the groups going to opt to leave one out and try to stall the Amalgam of Souls out in that phase where he's just got his scythe in the air, waving it around like you just don't care, not doing any mechanics?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter too much. As you say, like, some teams do opt to skip, keep the spirit alive for a little bit longer. But it really doesn't matter too much. His first phase isn't really that demanding. It's really not hard, and it doesn't make you do much less DPS. The Warlock has to move a little bit out of those swirlies, but...
Yeah, if I'm the mage, though, I will say, if I'm the mage, I would prefer leaving one out, you know, just so I don't have to deal with stuff, but they are going to get it all pulled in at once.
It's a beautiful Gore Fiends grasp.
It looks like maybe, okay, they're just going to deal with them all here on the side of Raider.io as well. It's a little bit sloppier on their side. That might give Games Revolted their first little inch here. Both these monks have to pop Karma. Not too much of a surprise there, but everybody's going to survive when that burst does go out.
Yeah, it's one big burst, and does a lot of damage, especially that's 23 Tyrannical we're talking about here as well. It will most likely one-shot you if you do not have any cooldown up, and as you said, we saw both the monks pop Karma, I think in both teams as well, about this, right before the burst come out. There's no reason to die to that because you know when it's coming as well, so it's just about being prepared there. And now we're back to the first phase. As said, not really much going on. It looks a little bit chaotic in Raider IO's melee phase there, as they have a lot of swirly things going around, but they're catching up a little bit here as well, and it's just a few percentage between both teams on this boss fight here.
And we've already said it quite a few times. The place where we're really expecting the teams to pull ahead is once that buff does go out. We expect Games Revolted to be able to use it very well here, but that makes it that much more important for Raider.io on that first boss. They want to be coming out with that little bit of the lead. Every second is going to matter quite a bit, and relatively similar comps as to how they will work, except for that mage being able to get that buff. The Warlock, though, is just super resilient there, even during that phase where, you know, everybody else has to pop the cooldowns. Warlock can kind of chill, just press Drain Soul, and you're going to stay up for the most part. You can hit wall if you feel like it. If not, just slash dance.
Yeah, not really the kind of range DPS that ends up dying a lot, and they're probably considered one of the best ones in terms of defenses. Maybe you would say rogues would take that spot, but they're melee as well, so really.
I was about to say, what type of rogue are you playing, Trekkie? It's just Glaive Storm, or Shuriken storming like crazy.
Outlaw.
Outlaw, yeah, Outlaw just shoot from range, roll the bones, only come in when you got a 5 roll. First death gonna come in here, and it's on the mage, and this is a very difficult pull as well. So they get past those spiders, then they get in here, and this is one of those rooms where, you know, Jack usually yells at me, he's like, why are you not standing at max range? And I'm like, because I can feel the power.
Yeah, that's really, I didn't really see what effect he died from. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the elemental that jumps on him, but it does jump on the closest player, so I believe it's a little bit unlikely that would jump to the mage, but they're keeping they must have mind controlled the archer or the mage just so, but they weren't able to get those stacks rolling there on the mage there, and they just kind of lost a lot of time having a bad pull.
That's the thing, Trekkie. I mean, you look at that pack, there's so many things that can kill you, right? You don't max range on the archer. You end up getting leapt on by the familiar. There are so many things that can go wrong here. Raider.io right now still dealing with that spider pack. This is not as difficult as a pull at all. They need to get through it, though, and we've already seen by Games Revolted what can go wrong here. Now we got those massive pulls that are going to start, and this is where the mage can really start coming online. If they mess this part up, though, Raider.io would definitely be counting their blessings, and they already got the Arcanist, though. They're starting to get the buffs off.
Yep, they're starting with the stacking here, so I believe we're just going to see a huge, absolutely huge pull. Probably going to have the Arcanist stay back here so that he can keep spell stealing that buff so they can deal with the next pack as well. Raider.io instead doing that huge pull. No mage here. They're even pre-bopping one of the monks just to make sure that he doesn't get slashed by those knife jugglers as well. And the kiting just starts here right away from Raider.io tanks.
Yeah, you just straight up see too. The mage switches its set as well. Drops down that rune of power. There's the bop, and now all you got to do is press one button and you win.
5 arcane explosions and that trash is gone. So if he still has the buff there, Arcanist, we still see in the back there. Spell steal's going off as well. He should still have it up for Shamalanga Ding Dong, as I think Sloot likes to call him. But Raider.io having to deal with this trash. No gimmicks here available for them, so they're probably going to try to line of sight them a little bit. You see the DK running a little bit here. He doesn't have the mass grip as he used that before. Games Revolted, however, having 2 deaths, one of them being the mages there. That is definitely not planned. This is one of the biggest issues with the mage tactic. You need to do it properly, otherwise it will not pay off for you. So even if you can make up a little bit of time on the bosses afterwards, you still need to do the trash properly as well.
That's 15 seconds for them right away. Trash still up, and now we see Raider.io. They're working on that pull, and this is another thing to think about, though. Bursting. Right? We haven't talked about it that much since we actually saw it initially get locked in. Yeah, you can kill everything at once. Enjoy yourself. You're going to have that bursting go off. And ultimately, Raider.io just slightly behind on trash. They're dealing with bursting well. The monks are putting out reasonable damage. Yes, it's not 11 million. It's not 12 million. But at the end of the day, they're working through this trash nice and easy. They're just 2% behind by Games Revolted. And they don't have any deaths yet. They're doing this right. Now, is that Shalamama Ding Dong that's still up?
Yeah, I forgot his real name after watching Slootcast this many times.
You watch Slootcast this once or twice, you lose a couple brain cells, and we all start calling him Shalamama Ding Dong. But ultimately now they're trying to work on getting this mage back online, and they kind of already messed up in a pretty big way.
Well, it depends on how they do the bosses. That's where they're really gonna shine, right? So they have a little bit of cushion there, having a little bit of fail on the trash, as long as they do the bosses, because we're talking about the absolutely huge difference here. We're 500% extra damage during blood loss, during cooldowns, everything like that. Like I said, you basically have 8 DPSers. The boss is gonna die so much faster for Games Revolted if they do things wrong. However, we have seen mages in this position, maybe towards the later part of the fight, lose out and die. And that could happen on this fight as well. There's a few very important things to look out for here. Is both the blade rush, the glaive and the blade rush, right? So that can do a lot of damage to you, and if that does that on the mage, he is likely gonna have to use his ice block, make sure that he survives that, and otherwise they're gonna lose so much DPS.
They're lucky they didn't lose their Arcanist though with how they messed up. Like that was the main thing I was looking for, is depending on who dies, you know, you could end up losing your Arcanist, but they're fine at this moment. They still do have that under control through that Death Knight. Going to be able to start stacking the bus, eat a nice little fish feast, and then they can just jump in, press heroism, and try to avoid all the mechanics. Just make sure stuff isn't sloppy at all. Now we can watch Ravencrest just get melted down. Now they've surpassed Raider.io, who actually pulled it on time. Raider.io playing this dungeon flawlessly. They don't have the mage, of course, but now look at this health just get deleted by this mage.
Yeah.
27 million right now, damage per second, starting to dip off just a little bit, but they've managed to get past most of the mechanics in this fight.
Cooldowns are out for the mage, but he still has the Arcanist, as you can see on the very, very far left side, and still casting, still spell stealing that every time it goes off as well. This boss just has a few seconds left to live. However, the beam does go on the furthest players, so that is the mage, and he's just blinking one way, blinking the other way, trying to outdeal it, because he needs to DPS, otherwise the group doesn't really have that much damage. Raider.io, they had 80% left on the boss when Revolted started the pull. They are now at 60%. So basically, Games Revolted did 100% of the damage, while Raider.io did 20. So that's a huge difference. This is really speaking to why the mage is so important on this particular map, and it's really kind of game changer.
And also keep in mind, I'm going to say it frankly here, Raider.io has done this dungeon perfectly so far. They have not really made any mistakes. With the classes that they have, they've played very well. On the other end, Games Revolted has made mistakes. We've already seen them make mistakes with how they've done pulls. They have a huge advantage because of this mage. There is still potential, though, for things to go wrong. We've seen that they are not invincible on this trash. They're going for a big pull here yet again, as they should, based off of this strategy. And let's see how they actually do handle the bursting here.
This is where you really have those Windwalkers come into play. As I said before, your mage is not...
Why pick bursting? Like, why did you pick bursting? Tell me.
This is really, yeah, indeed.
Why?
I don't really see why this... I could see why they wouldn't want to do Volcanic, because they have the one mage going to have to deal with it a little bit, but bursting really not working for them at all here. However, Radar does have a death here. They do have a Comet Res. They might choose not to use it, but they actually chose to use it right away. They're still 20%. That's a huge part of the HP left. But
they have to use it there. I actually do agree with this use of BR. We have this talk. I've had it with Sloot a million times. It's like, kind of where is that threshold? On this boss in particular, because of how the mechanics go, by all means, use it here. You should be fine when you get over the Thrash Bite, and then you're actually going to have that Battle Res back up for the last boss. And we all kind of know the last boss, not really easy to use Battle Res on. You know, it's depending on the timing, but this is kind of the best opportunity to use Battle Res. Raider.io continue to have a relatively perfect run. Those first two deaths going to be those slip-ups, but they're running things relatively well. They're doing much better on the trash, and they are playing to the bursting. We're seeing Games Revolted, who locked in this bursting when they're running the mage strat, somewhat falter here.
Yeah, I really don't think that was a proper pick for them, but it was their pick. They have to play around it, and did a very messy pull here, and hopefully we won't see anything more of that, but we're going to have the bats and the Fel Guards later on. The bats won't cause bursting, but the Fel Guards will, so it's not really the same thing here, but Raider.io instead doing this half-moon kind of crescent area now, and hopefully we'll see a bit better performance from them doing this one, but they're going to have to deal with the bursting as well. We're seeing it pull out right now, all those small scavengers dying, it's huge bursting stacks on everyone, and the healer is having to top everyone up between, and they refresh bursting right before... and we do end up having a Warlock go down. For some reason, it's a Warlock.
Relatively well done, though. I mean, Asmonbald being the GOAT there for a second, and you do lose the Warlock. Curious to see exactly how that went down. It looked like they were close to just completely resetting it, but that was much cleaner than what we saw for the Mage. And you know what? It's actually a lot easier to be cleaner when you're not doing 27 million DPS, when you are trying to deal with bursting. That's one of the reasons that this affix is so weird. Now we're going to see them run it. Oh, man. That's all right, bud. That's about the worst mistake. Are they all just running into these rocks?
We still had an ad up. They didn't get everything, but they're not dodging these ads. Not only are they not dodging. Well, the rock dodging is a little bit more complicated when you're dealing with ads as well. However, those ads doesn't really stun you, so it's a little bit of a slip-up. Starting to get stunned there and then can easily be chain stunned.
Let's see your 27 million Mage DPS get you past a rock, homie. Doesn't work. Raider.io now has managed to get past the rocks. They're dealing with these bats right now. They're going to clean them up. And after they do clean them up, as you already noted, Trekkie, a very important thing to know about these bats because of how they actually are instantiated into the dungeon, they aren't going to be triggering bursting. So they still do have to worry about bursting because of the pool. They're going to let that fall off here as you see Asmonbald getting the party nice and healthy before that final stack of bursting does go off. And now they're ready to pull this boss. And, you know, Raider.io's got a real chance of winning here. Jumping into the mosh pit like that, you know, sometimes...
Games Revolted still has that one mob. They're going to deal with it now beforehand instead of trying to run up and dealing with that, as well as the boulders that literally just wiped it last time. Meanwhile, Raider.io is now dealing with Smash Bite. They end up bloodlusting on this one, which is a very smart move. This is a fight that quickly runs out of real estate to stand in, and they're gonna need that. However, I wouldn't count Games Revolted fully out here yet. They're gonna have to do the bat pull as well, and once they're done with that, which hopefully isn't as messy as we've seen some of their other pulls, once they get to Smash Bite, they will be able to delete it. If we look at the previous boss, if they still pull it when Raider.io has more than 20% left on Smash Bite, they should be able to kill it about the same time. And Raider.io might actually get out ahead here, but it's going to be pretty close.
Raider.io, Games Revolted made it past the rocks. All right, but Raider.io here has pulled ahead. They use their heroism as well. I'm not sure if you actually said that yet, if you drew people's attention to it, because I was so focused on whether or not Games Revolted was going to get past this very simple mechanic. And Raider.io, though, they have managed to pull Smash Bite here. Not to be confused with Thrash Bite. I actually said that a little bit earlier, but yeah, this is Smash Bite. His cousin, you know, Legion.
I think they were actually legit brothers, so I'm not quite sure about the demonology family tree, but I think they're actually brothers.
You know what they say about Legion? It is the expansion where fiends become family. It is the Olive Garden of expansions for World of Warcraft. But Smash Bite being worked on very well by Raider.io. They're managing to use this space nice and easily, and they've already invested their heroism. Now they're just going to have to get to that last boss. Now Games Revolted, they have a second here to actually reset things, but they have 10 extra deaths. They have 10 extra deaths. It's going to be an extra 50 seconds for this band of thieves. Their best hope right now is going to be their mage. This is a reason that they selected this dungeon. They picked bursting, which has come to bite them in the butt a few times, and they jumped onto the dance floor a little bit too quick there, Trekkie, and they got stoned to death.
It's not a very favorable position, that's for sure. And Raider.io just finishing the boss. We have seen Revolted just stack up that Archimage. We're not even going to have time to talk about this boss. This boss is getting absolutely destroyed, already at 50%. This is ridiculous, the amount of damage here. Cooldowns are starting to run out. He still has to buff those, so he's still doing 500 extra %. But this is so fast, and if they could do similar on the last boss, they could potentially catch up. But Raider.io really doesn't have much to go until they reach that last boss. And Revolted now at 15% to go. Gonna finish this off really, really quickly, and they'll then deal with the Lancers. And neither of these teams are probably gonna end up killing them with the boss, but here we see the mage actually going down. They're gonna have to do 5 or 6% legit on this boss.
I just want to bring this up one more time, and this is one of the reasons that I love stuff like this being there. I love when classes can actually flex their identity a little bit in dungeons like this. Everybody's going, oh, the mage, it's a free win, it's a free win, it's a free win. No, if you mess up if you do stuff poorly, you will die. This is a high key. It will punish you. It is not free regardless of what class you have, and that was one of the things that we like seeing with Warlocks actually having abilities like that as well. Other classes finding different things where they can shine. Yes, they can shine. Yes, it gives you a huge advantage, but you have to do the dungeon right. If you can't do the meat and potato things right, you are going to see wipes over and over again. Purgatory activated, then the Death Knight gets chunked down. They are so far behind at this point. Yes, they did manage to melt that boss, but they have so many seconds on the clock from these deaths. It has been sloppy, and we are going to see a mage lose in Blackrock Hold if Raider.io can just play this next boss cleanly. And the big telling factor is going to be when the demon behind the man actually does pop out here and they enter that next phase of this encounter.
Yeah, they can have a few things go wrong here, and even you have the Stinging Swarm as well, which can be really dangerous as it does a lot of damage. If you don't get in too close and you can kill it off fast enough, can cause a bit of trouble. But as I said, this is a 23. You have to respect that. It is not a fortified, but trash is all that's wiping games Revolted right now. They're running that mage to delete the bosses. Bosses are not an issue as they die before they have time to do mechanics, right?
But I will say, because I agree with you, bursting, so their selection is going to be part of the problem. They wipe on trash. They wipe on bosses as well. They maybe not wipe, but they're still having deaths. They're not perfectly clean. And then they also died to, you know, a thing that we don't even talk about very much, which is the environment. They actually died to the rocks there. Big thing to note, Raider.io, when they went into this, they were at 99%. They did release that ad. That's been taken down now, so they're at 100% with the trash. They stay up in that phase. Now they're going to be able to get these buffs and live past these Shadow Bolt volleys. That's the main thing to be looking for here. Look for when this Shadow Bolt volley does go out, see what these guys actually do invest, but at the end of the day, they're pretty much to that home stretch.
Yeah, it's not very dangerous at this point either. Like, it is a tyrannical setting, and Grievous can play a role here as well. There still is a little bit potential for them to wipe, as you see that Shadow Bolt volley doing about 40 to 50% of everyone's HP. But if there's not incoming damage right after that, or they all stand in the environment, as Revolted has learned to do, it's not really probably not gonna see much happen for Raider.io here, other than the boss dying. Meanwhile, Revolted is now gonna be starting to pull the first boss. They're charging up that mage, gonna pull the first one. It's probably gonna delete that. But not only, even if they do that, they're gonna have to wait for the demon form and then him to give you the buff, and then delete him as well. And with I don't know what that is. That is 13 deaths differential. That is just not going to be doable if Raider.io finishes this off now.
It's a whole lot of seconds. Yeah, I'm not going to do the math either because I finished school. I'm getting to watch people play video games. It's the weekend. I ain't doing no math. We don't need any numbers to tell you right now that Raider.io is seconds away from taking down a mage, seconds away from getting to 2-0, seconds away from progressing in this tournament, and this will be the end of the road for Games Revolted. And the big thing that you brought up is the fact that, yeah, there's an intermission period. So as fast as they are able to go on the boss, they're not going to be able to make up the, almost a minute, maybe even more than a minute. I already said I wasn't going to do math. Good, because I can't. But Dan, I can't even say his name, but he's dead. Good job to Raider.io.
Rich, let's just calm down. Let's just bring it back. It was
that was awesome. You know what's more awesome than a mage doing 72 million DPS? A mage doing 72 million DPS and losing. I've been a Warlock main for a very long time.
I was going to say, your bias against mages is clearly showing. Yeah, we talked going into this that this wasn't necessarily going to be a free win. It's a huge advantage to have the mage, but you still have to execute. And that bursting affix, we were even saying, like, why do you do this to yourself? And we saw the bursting affix definitely was responsible for at least one wipe. It was the Grievous bursting combination there. And yeah, they were getting the bosses down just fine. Again, that mage is going to help you do that, but they were definitely having some issues there. And, you know, on the other side, Raider.io, they played their game. They played it very clean. They had a couple of small hiccups, as you might expect, with that affix combo in that dungeon, but otherwise they just played it really well.
Yeah, there's like 2 trash packs that you can completely obliterate with the Arcane Mage there. It takes a few seconds to stack it up, but you can remove those. But mainly you're going to be using that Arcane Mage to delete the bosses. It is a tyrannical setting, and you don't want to be dealing with bosses for too long. It's a big time sink in these dungeons, but that doesn't mean that you can ignore the trash at all, especially not if you choose bursting, which I think was their mistake there. They kind of maybe didn't want to make bosses harder by adding an affix like necrotic or something like that, so they just want to be, okay, let's delete bosses, make them a non-nation.
It's really worth clarifying, too, that if you're thinking, well, what specifically makes bursting kind of a bad call there, with the mage you bring into Blackrock Hold, you're really giving yourself a pretty powerful advantage anyway. You don't need to throw in a curveball for your opponent, especially when it seems like one that maybe you yourself aren't as good at handling. So Volcanic probably would have been the safer option. That's what we've kind of seen a lot in Blackrock Hold this weekend. So, you know, it was a good run from Games Revolted. They were able to send Method to the lower bracket. There's definitely some pieces there maybe they consider moving forward in terms of what they want to do. But look, we're going to get that matchup. I think folks, when they looked at the bracket, they wanted to see Method versus Raider.io, and that's what we're going to see as we start coming to the tail end of the lower bracket here. These two teams, these two heavy powerhouse names in the European Warcraft community are going to square off.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that one. I do want to just go back as we move forward in this match and kind of move forward to that next one. Bursting blew up in their face, literally, and I think that was a big part of it. But I loved getting to see this because it does show, yes, classes can give you advantages, but there are so many more things at play. We've seen how strong the mage can be, but now moving forward, even when we move into future dungeons here, right? We're going to have BFA. It's around the corner. What, 3 months away? I don't know. I already told you I can't do math. I don't do days of the week or months or anything like that either. But the thing is we may have dungeons where certain classes are very strong, but preparation on your main classes, preparations for what affixes you want to bring, things like that are going to matter so much more than that.
Yeah, we may have the Mythic Dungeon Invitational in BFA, but we're never going to have the Richik Math Invitational, unfortunately. Up next, though, we're going to head back up to the upper bracket, where it's going to be Team PogChamp taking on Shell's Angels. Again, neither of these teams have yet to taste defeat, so they'll be battling for a spot. Again, winner goes to that Global LAN Finals. Let's see what happens on the other side of this break.